In this video, we're going to take a look at the box model. If we look at a sample page with HTML, we can see that different elements on the page appear as they are defined in the code. So if we look at this page, index.html, the first thing we have is hello world, then the lorem ipsum text, and then some red text and some more text. And it happens in kind of a very predictable from the top working all the way down. And it's basically in a stacked format. Any element, though, can have spacing attributes added to it. We can identify each element and we can add spacing. Let's see if we can view each element so that we can see what the spacing is. We'll go to our styles, and I'm going to put in some code that will add borders around all of the elements. Save that, and then we'll view this page. Now we can see that each of the elements that we've included in our HTML code, the H1, the P, the M emphasis, and some div here and span, each of these is enclosed in a box. And with every box, you can define what's known as padding and margins. Here's an illustration of an element, any element on the page. Initially, you have content. This can be, if it's an H1 tag, it's the text that is enclosed within the H1 element. And it has certain dimensions defined by the top, left, bottom, right of the actual text itself. Outside of this, we have what's known as padding. And the padding you can think of as in a nice new car, you've got padding on the seats, on the dashboard. It is separating you from the hard and cold metal of the automobile. But once you get outside of this padding, you've got what's known as the border area. So this allows you to have content, and the padding gives you the option of expanding around that content, say adding a color background, and then you can, outside of that padding, you can have borders. And then outside of the borders, you can have a margin. Now the borders can be colored as well as the padding, but the margin is always transparent, and the purpose of the margin is to separate the box more from other boxes. Note here that you can have top padding, bottom padding, left padding, and right padding. So it doesn't need to be the same all the way around, although this diagram shows equal spacing or equal padding around each, as well as equal borders. You can define a padding different from the top, the bottom, left, and right. Same with borders. You can make the borders any width, top, bottom, left, and right. Same with margins. As well, with borders, you can define them as being solid, dashed, dotted, etc. So this is what's known as the box model. And the box model is used to help us to visualize how our various elements are going to be separated from each other. So let's add something to our H1. We'll add a margin of 20 pixels and padding of 40 pixels. And we'll look at our page. So here we have a margin of 20 pixels going all the way around and 40 pixels between the text and the border. Now we haven't actually put a border in except for this default border, and let's comment that out for now. And look at it once again. So this is how it would look without all the borders around. Let's add a border. No, let's add some background color. So the background color, as we noted in the diagram, the background color is applied to the padding. Now let's turn on the border. And we'll add a border color. See how that works. And here's our border. Let's try changing the color of each side of the border. So rather than just a simple border color, I'm going to adjust this to say border bottom color. And I'll copy these and paste them. Bottom, top, left, right. And we'll set the border bottom color to something different. Gray. Keep that the same, and we'll make this one okay. Let's see what this looks like now. So I've got a gray border for the top, yellow for the bottom, right is green, left is blue. And of course I can also change each side to being a different thickness. I can set different styles rather than solid. I can make it dashed and so on. Now unfortunately there's no grid element yet in HTML that can help us with visual alignment on the page. But I think this function will be available later in the course when we use the Bootstrap framework.